Worms beneath the floorboards. I remember the look on my mother's face when I told her I was studying anomalous entomology. It was the day after the scandal broke, one I had tried so hard to expose. I stood in the living room, the scent of burnt coffee lingering in the air, hands trembling as I clutched my notes filled with sketches of insect behavior. "You're obsessed, Charlie. This isn't a career, it's a delusion," she spat, her voice sharp as glass. My father only shook his head, his disappointment palpable, a weight that nearly crushed me. "Get a real job or you'll lose your mind," my brother Nathan chimed in, a sneer curling his lips. The laughter of my family echoed, a cacophony of mockery that still lingers in my ears, a ghostly reminder of that moment. But what they didn't understand, what they refused to accept, was that I had seen patterns in the chaos. I had witnessed something that transcended their ignorance, a creeping sense of dread that clung to me like a shroud. Years passed in solitude, my obsession becoming my only companion. I delved into abandoned buildings, condemned homes where shadows stretched longer than the truth. I mapped cursed territories, pursued whispers of folklore that danced just outside the reach of sanity. The world outside my door faded into a distant memory, leaving me to wrestle with the darkness beneath the floorboards. I became an expert not just in pest control, but in the very essence of fear itself. My studies led me to uncover something unspeakable, a commonality among the infestations I documented. It wasn't merely the insects that haunted these homes, it was their behavior. They moved with an intelligence I had never fathomed before, forming patterns that mirrored the chaos of human emotions. They thrived on despair, feeding off the very essence of those who once inhabited these spaces. I became their reluctant witness, and still, the echoes of my family's laughter taunted me. When I finally received recognition, it was of a different kind. The scientific community wasn't ready for the truths I had unearthed. They saw me as a warning, a figure cloaked in shadows, whispering of horrors they preferred to ignore. I had survived encounters that would unravel the sanity of most, and I came back to a world that only wanted to silence my voice. But return I did to the house I had once called home, ready to confront not just my past, but the very fabric of disbelief that had so cruelly cast me aside. As I stepped onto the familiar porch, the wood creaked beneath my feet, a memory of childhood laughter now replaced by an oppressive silence. The air felt thick, heavy with unspoken words. My family stood in the living room, their expressions shifting from disbelief to something darker as I entered. I was no longer the child they had ridiculed. I was a vessel of knowledge, a harbinger of truth they could no longer deny. "Charlie?" My mother's voice trembled, the veneer of her disbelief cracking. "You shouldn't have come back. After everything." Before she could finish, I raised my hand, revealing a jar filled with writhing, iridescent larvae. The room seemed to shrink as their tiny bodies thrashed within the glass. A grotesque ballet. "It's not just about insects," I said, my voice steady as I felt the weight of their scrutiny. "It's about what lies beneath, what you refuse to see." The air turned stale, and shadows danced across the walls, twisting and contorting. My family recoiled, their faces pale as realization dawned. They had mocked my obsession, dismissed my warnings, and now the very darkness I had studied seeped into their lives. I had become a bridge between the worlds of the living and the dead, and they were about to face the consequences of their disbelief. In an instant, the lights flickered, plunging us into darkness. The sound of scratching filled the air, a chorus of tiny legs moving with a purpose. I watched as the walls began to tremble, the floorboards creaking beneath the weight of countless bodies. "You need to understand," I murmured, my heart racing. "They're angry. They've been waiting for recognition." Panic set in. My brother stumbled backward, his eyes wide with horror as the larva began to emerge from the cracks in the floor. "What have you done?" he gasped, his voice breaking. My mother clutched at her chest, gasping for air as the temperature plummeted. "I've done nothing," I replied, feeling the emotional weight of years of ridicule come crashing down. "You did this. You refused to see what was right in front of you." The swarm enveloped them, a writhing mass of fury and desperation. I stood frozen, unable to look away as they clawed at the remnants of my family, seeking out the disbelief that had festered for so long. Their screams echoed, a haunting symphony that blended with the whispers of the past. As the shadows receded and the chaos subsided, I found myself alone in the dim light, the jar still clenched in my hand. The weight of my family's absence pressed down. But so did the bittersweet taste of vindication. I had emerged from the darkness, a survivor of the horrors no one else dared confront. I stepped outside, the night air cool against my skin. The world had become a canvas of latent fear, and I was now its curator. The whispers of the past trailed behind me, a reminder of what I had endured and what others would never understand. I would carry the burden of truth, knowing the cost of disbelief. Forever reshaped by the horrors I had faced. And as I walked away, I knew one thing for certain. The world would never forget what lay beneath the floorboards, nor would I let them.